Well, I do to my computer. It's easier for me.
Okay, we are recording.
We are going. All right, good evening, everybody. So we'll get started with the roll call.
Okay, Lynette,
Here.
Yael,
Here.
Jan,
Here.
Christine. Christine's here. Oh, she's connecting.
She's connecting to audio right now.
Okay, we'll come back to Christine. Larry,
Here.
Sandra,
Here.
Jim.
And here,
Oh, yeah, Jim
oh, Jim and Tim.
and and Trish
Here.
and Christine is still connecting to
She's
audio.
still connecting.
Okay, well, we got everybody. So Tim, you're up.
All right. So everybody will be muted. This will be the same as the last meeting. When you have a question, you'll raise your hand by using the icon down on the bottom. And Trish will answer or allow you to answer, and then you have your 3 minutes. We ask that you save any public comment for each agenda item. You have 3 minutes. That's it. No back and forth. So you have 3 minutes per agenda item for public comment. The LOCAC members will all remain unmuted. They can mute themselves if they want, but there can be discussion between the LOCAC members. If you guys are ready, we'll move on to the sheriff's report.
I do not see the sheriff, just CHP tonight.
Okay, we have the highway patrol report.
Okay, but the sheriff might be one of these numbers down at the bottom. I don't know. I don't recognize them.
Somebody's raising their hand down.
Okay.
We're asking the CHP right now to unmute. I don't have numbers on the bottom.
There is a call in user. Who is calling user? Can you identify?
We could ask them
You
to
gotta
unmute.
unmute them.
Well, I don't see him.
I do.
No, they-
I just asked them to unmute.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Hello,
caller.
yes, Stuart MacDonald from the Sheriff's Office.
Good evening.
Hello. Thank you for having this evening. For our November 10 to December 10 time period, we had 71 calls for service. That compares to the same time period last year, we had 78 calls for service in Los Osos. Of those 71 calls that we responded to, we had 1 assault and battery, which was a physical assault. We had 36 disturbances, 2 burglaries, 6 thefts, 4 vandalisms. Fortunately, this month there were no mail thefts. We had 3 phone scam calls, 6 suspicious circumstances, and some of the proactive work that the deputies that serve you did in the last 30-day period. Enforcement stops, which include vehicle stops, bicycle stops, or pedestrian stops for enforcement purposes. There were 62 of those stops over the last 30 days. And then I like to include what I call preventative patrol activity. That's foot patrols, extra patrols of specific areas where we have problems, and on-site activity created by the deputies who are out working and serving you. There were 51 preventative patrol activities. And then over the course of the month, there were 34 COVID compliance activities. And those COVID compliance activities generally involve checking several businesses during each of those events. And with that, I would take any questions.
All right, Trish, are there anybody raising their hand?
Nope.
I am.
Anybody on LOCAC? Sandra?
Sandra.
Could you tell us the difference between a burglary and a theft? I just heard those 2 different numbers and I'm not clear of the difference.
Yeah, so a burglary involves breaking into generally a structure like a business or a residence, or if a vehicle is locked and and force is used to break into it, that would be classified as a burglary. And then thefts are things that are taken, so like from a yard or from an unlocked vehicle, those would be classified as thefts.
Okay, thank you. And then with the COVID compliant, does that mean like if a business is not following the rules as far as having more than the allotted amount of people or masks, then that's when they're not compliant? Is that what's
Correct. The county has instituted quite a few directives to help keep people safe. Masking is one of those. We've just entered a period of reduced capacity limits inside businesses. So the deputies will check several businesses, like they might go to the Williams Brother Plaza and check all of the businesses in there, the grocery store, the hardware store, the coffee store, or they might go down to Ralph's and check the businesses at that location. So it's randomized, but it occurs daily. And like I said, 34 times in the last month, they've gone to different business areas and checked several businesses for compliance.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
All right, any other questions, Trish?
No other hands, and I just asked the CHP captain to please unmute.
Thank you very much for the sheriff. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too. All right, we have the Highway Patrol report for us.
I am here tonight,
right, good
finally. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I just want to quickly introduce myself, Greg Klingenberg. I'm the new commander of the San Luis Obispo CHP area. And again, I apologize for not being on earlier. If it wasn't one thing, it was another. And so it just has not worked out to be able to be on these calls. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I get on the calls from here on out. So thank you for your patience with me.
Great.
And my report tonight includes the November, the Los Osos area for the month of November. And we had a total of 7 collisions. In the month of November, 5 of those were property damage only collisions. One of them was a hit and run collision, and one was an injury collision. We made 2 DUI arrests unrelated to the collisions, and one of the collisions did involve a DUI driver as well. Just a quick look over the locations and the primary collision factors. The thing that I just quickly noticed is that a majority of the collisions are unsafe speed for conditions, which is not really that unusual. Those tend to be, and then location wise, it looked like most of our collisions were on Los Osos Valley Road at various intersections or between various intersections in the Los Osos area. So with that, I as well am able to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Trish, is there anybody that's got their
Sorry,
hand
no.
raised? Anybody on LOCAC?
There's no hands raised on LOCAC or
And it's
for the
frozen.
community.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your report.
And I just sent Carrie a unmute.
Hope I didn't miss anything. My computer froze for a short time.
Oh, no
No
worries.
worries. Thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good
And the county
evening.
staff report. Hi, Carrie. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Just wanted to give you guys an update on the community plan. We have a big day coming up next Tuesday, December 15th, where the Board of Supervisors will be considering the community plan, as well as the resource summary report and the growth management ordinance, specifically to Los Osos. The board's also going to be considering the Los Osos Habitat Conservation Plan and the Memorandum of Understanding with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. That's specifically to do mitigation activities at the Morro Dunes Ecological Reserve. Also, both EIRs will be considered by the board. And that's really all I have for you tonight. But I am available for questions.
All right, any LOCAC members have any questions?
Yael?
Just one question, Carrie. Can they do it in one day? I mean, is that task doable for one day?
I think so, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes at the meeting.
So there is a possibility of continuing?
There's always a possibility of continuances in the world of hearings, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Bruce?
Thank you, Ms. Bartel and Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be with you as always. I love Carrie's got it just right. I love her understated approach to describing the agenda item on our plate on Tuesday. It is indeed the Board of Supervisors hearing of the Los Osos Community Plan and associated actions. And it is a big item, no doubt about it. We'll look forward to moving through it. I'm hopeful we can get it done in a day. The vacation rental ordinance is split out as a separate action item because it is a proposed modification to our coastal zone land use ordinance. As the community plan proceeds to the Coastal Commission for certification, which will be the next step after the board takes action, I would expect the vacation rental ordinance specific to Los Osos will go along with it. So, you know, there's still a few months of work once the board gets done with it, but I'm really excited that we've gotten it in front of the board. This has been a very long time coming, and I've been talking regularly with staff as recently as today to make sure that they've got all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and ready to present it to my colleagues. And away we go. The other big news of the board, of course, is that the governor appointed Ms. Dawn Ortiz-Legg as the District 3 supervisor. I think that's a great choice. She has served ably on the Planning Commission for a number of years now. And before that's been very active in the community. You may remember her as engaged in with one of the companies that did the big solar projects out in the Carrizo Plain. And so very happy to have Supervisor Ortiz-Legg with us. She sat on Tuesday and will be with us again on next Tuesday and on into the future. So that's a good thing. As you can imagine, much of the energy of the county is absorbed in dealing with the COVID situation. Today, if you hadn't checked the numbers, we unfortunately set a one-day record of 196 cases, new cases here. The surge continues. You'll recall we're now exactly 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and so it's not surprising to see that. And you know, obviously, very difficult situation. But you know, even with that said. With that said, we have also the highest number of people in the hospital and 7 people in the ICU, which is as high as it's been. It's hit that a couple of times. All that said, our hospital capacity and our ICU capacity is still in very good shape. We were running somewhere around 65% or 62%, I guess, of the ICU beds are available at this point and open, which is much better than most places in the state. It was on that basis, well, and as you know, the most recent stay-at-home order issued by the state very much concentrates on a deep concern about the capacity of hospitals to take care of surging case rates and the serious ones. I was listening to the news this evening, and Southern California as a whole is down to something like 7% availability of ICU beds. That's just a terrible place to be, and it's expected to get worse. But here in San Luis County and in both Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, we have a very different situation. And we look at our past history of COVID, we do not see the kind of transmission, even with the substantial amount of visitors we've had. You know, we have had cases, but we, in general, have not had as many serious cases as some places. And you know, a lot of people are complaining that the brush was a little broad when the governor put this last set of restrictions in, and has negatively impacted quite a number of businesses in this community. We believe there is solid public health evidence and solid long-term history of the three counties working together as a tri-county region. And on that basis, at our meeting on Tuesday, we authorized a letter to the governor, which follows up a letter Dr. Bornstein sent to the county, to the state health officer, asking that when the restrictions come off in about another, I guess it's about another 2 weeks now, that the three counties of Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis be considered as their own region and judged on their own metrics at that point. It's not clear at all what chance that has, but we think that that's fair. We think it's based in very good public health science. And I continue to advocate, along with supervisors from all over the state, for those kinds of adjustments to the stay-at-home order. We've been in a number of conversations through our state association of counties, which I serve as a member of the executive committee on. And we've had a couple conversations last week directly with the administration staff. We're expecting more to come. I can't say that there's anybody that's happy with the situation. And we do feel there are some adjustments that would be reasonable and prudent to make. So that's that takes up a goodly chunk of time. There is one last thing that I would like to mention to you. You may be aware of the Water Resources Advisory Committee that the county convenes. That is a group of fairly large, I think nearly 40 members at this point, with representation from each city, each community services district, various other special districts, that makes recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on matters of water resources of all kinds, whether it be stormwater, drinking water, or anything in between. We had an individual, each supervisor appoints a representative of the district. The District 2 representative, Mr. Tom Gray up in Cambria, actually got elected to the Cambria CSD, and thus he, by their bylaws, becomes ineligible to serve as a public member. So I am looking, I'm surveying all the communities in the district to see if there are any interested folks who would like to be considered for that appointment. We're making the rounds of the advisory councils, putting out the word, and if you or someone you know is interested, we'd be happy to take their information. As we gather possible nominees, I will be making a decision at some point in the next few weeks to few months. So just thought I'd let you know about that. And then beyond that, all sorts of things to talk about. We did some work outlining budget priorities for the county at our last meeting. I've been working with a working group, a statewide working group on sea level rise adaptation with the Coastal Commission, and you know, all the other many things that that the county is involved in. But with that, I'll stop and entertain your questions.
All right, any LOCAC members? Thanks, Bruce, or Supervisor Gibson. Any LOCAC
Bruce will-
members have any
Bruce will
questions?
Bruce will do just fine at this hour.
I had a question.
I have one. Oh, go ahead, Sandra.
So with the hospital beds, at what point do we bring in people from, because we're lumped with Southern California, does that open it up for residents who have COVID, who need ICU hospital beds to come to our county when theirs are maxed out?
Well, I think that's a possibility at any time. And I think from a humanitarian standpoint, we've had a little bit of conversation with the hospital, and certainly if we have resources to provide, we are going to provide them. In the current situation, since we are lumped in with 10 other counties and a total of 21 million people, it doesn't affect our scoring one way or another. But in fact, we just haven't seen that kind of mobility of hospital, even non-ICU hospital patients. But we stand by and certainly would arrange something. We also have a couple hundred beds in our alternate care site, all still ready to go at Cal Poly. They have never been used. So again, making sure resources are well applied is important.
So this is Chris. Can I ask the next question? So I saw a quote of you in the New Times, and you were saying that regards to the water, we might have to do something unpopular. And I'm wondering specifically what you meant.
Well, so that has to do with the water situation that a number of folks have been commenting on as we head into the consideration of the community plan. So let me just back up and give a little context to that comment. One of them is that as we at the county, outline our land use plans going forward, it is a foundational assumption that this has to be based on a sustainable water supply, adequate enough to serve the development that we contemplate. And we have structured the plan in a way to predicate any future development on findings that there is a sustainable water supply. And there's a slightly complicated, but not overly so, way of stepping forward into the future, where we look to be sure that those water resources are available. We have obviously, as you know, studied the basin extensively through the Basin Management Committee. We have a basin management plan and a requirement that the basin be operated in a balanced fashion. And we've made a lot of progress going forward. But in order to finish the first phase of progress and then embark on the second phase, which is really the most important one, that is going to look for developing the actual resources. I mean, we have a basin plan that says we can provide for the existing customers, and we can also provide for the development envisioned in the plan if certain things are done, if certain wells are drilled in certain positions, if interties are taken up, if conservation is employed, and a number of other actions. Those are in the programs A, B, C, D, and others. And so the key to realizing the water resource that exists is going to be for the water purveyors to do what's necessary to develop those resources. That's, this is one of these things now where the county has gotten to a point where it's done pretty much what it can with the development of the sewer system and things like that. And so what that quote was referencing is that, now we have some challenging things we need to do. We need to, for instance, spread the cost of basin management all over the basin. Right now, the prohibition zone through the sewer the sewer service area is paying for a certain amount of recycled water, for instance, that is benefiting the entire basin. So one of the things that's on the plate of the Basin Management Committee is to figure out how that cost be equitably shared. Similarly, as we move forward through the plan, these things have to be paid for, and new development has to pay for its impact on the water system. So my reference to being unpopular is that, for instance, the CSD has to decide where to drill a well, and there's been controversy about that. And all the water purveyors are going to have to decide how revenue is going to be generated to accomplish the projects that are going to make the water resource available for the purposes that are envisioned. And those things can be challenging. And so maybe I picked the wrong, well, I didn't pick the wrong word, because when you ask somebody to pay for something, you tend not to be the most popular person in the room. So I hope that explains, Chris.
Yes, that's more clear. I mean, we're moving along with the Project C well. I'm just, what other projects, are there other projects you think we need to pay for?
Well, as you move forward, you look at making, for instance, as we get into those kinds of projects that will develop the resource to allow for new development, there's projects to further denitrify the upper aquifer water. There are projects potentially to enhance the safe yield of the basin by discharging water to Los Osos Creek. There are other wells that are envisioned being drilled. There's the basic business of making sure that the basin has a good monitoring network in it. And all of those things have costs associated with them. And the challenge is going to be to equitably allocate those costs and, protect existing customers so as not to charge them for things that are really to the benefit of potential future development.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions for Supervisor Gibson from LOCAC? Anybody have their hand up, Trish, that you can see?
No one has their hand up, but there is a public member who would like to speak with Carrie. I don't know if you'd like to do that at the end of this section or if you would like to do that now.
That's fine, go ahead.
Let me unmute Carrie.
Thank you, Supervisor, for your report.
Thank you. And I'm going to hang around for just a bit, but I do have a few other commitments and another busy day tomorrow. So
all right, well, thanks for being on.
Do it a pleasure. I wish you all a very happy holiday season, and I will look forward to seeing you in January, if not before.
Yeah.
All right, we have Dave and to speak with Carrie.
Carrie, I just wanted to ask, can you hear me out there?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Carrie, I just wanted to ask, what is it exactly that's going on in the Morro Dunes, whatever you call it, area?
Ecological reserve,
Right.
restoration projects. A few of them are removing belt grass, enhanced management, potentially closing some trails. So basically habitat management and habitat enhancement.
All right. Well, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, you have another public member with a raised hand, Patrick McGibney.
Okay.
I'm trying to, there. Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. This is, I'd like to ask Supervisor Gibson a question. Actually, I have two of them. The first one is, Supervisor Gibson, has the county demonstrated a sustainable water basin for Los Osos yet?
Let me unmute. There you go.
Well, the county has in the annual reports of the basin management committee has shown that right now we are using a little less than 70% of the safe yield of the basin. And that's one metric that we use to assess how we're doing. There are other metrics that are showing a trend in the right direction, and they've also shown some short-term reversals. But I think in general, we have information in front of us that demonstrates that the basin is, certainly at or near sustainability. There's yet work to be done to confirm it, and our approach to all of this is adaptive management. And so we have put in place a variety of actions and projects. We being the members of the Basin Management Committee, which are the 3 water purveyors in the county, and we're seeing things moving where we, basically where we'd like to see them.
Thank you. The reason I asked that because the community plan, as you know, is coming before the board on Tuesday. Actually, it'll only be a half a day that you have to work on it because it's coming after lunch. And you're going to be looking at that for approval, but the coastal development permit issued for the Los Osos wastewater project requires that the county demonstrate a sustainable basin before the California Coastal Commission will adopt the Los Osos community plan. Mm-hmm. So aren't you a little premature at doing this right now? Because the basin has not been shown to be sustainable. It might be working towards that level or showing signs of that level, but you cannot say that we demonstrate now that we have a sustainable basin. And if the Coastal Commission won't be approving or adopting the Los Osos community plan, why is the county doing this right now?
Well, I guess there are a couple of assumptions in there and a few details that really should be laid out. As I indicated in my previous comments, if you look at the structure of how we handle water relative to new development, we absolutely need to make a finding of sustainability. And that's based on both seeing the completion of what's considered the first phase, or programs A and C in the basin management plan, and continuing adaptive management to be sure that we're verifying what's going on. But in the first stage, our proposal is to not is to put a zero growth rate with some exceptions until we do see the first phase projects completed. After that, we have to make specific findings. So I think the structure is there. And then, we have to continue working cooperatively with the water purveyors. And, if they, some of them have expressed, how should we say, a desire to be very careful about moving forward, which I certainly respect. But at a point, if they feel they can't, really it's on the water purveyors to tell us that they have a sustainable supply. And if they feel they don't, then they have the option of not issuing a will serve letter to connect new development. So I think there's a natural check and balance there that is appropriate for seeing development go based on a finding that there is appropriate water.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Let's move on to.
We have another public member, Back Bay Beck, who would like to talk.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Bruce. My question is, well, here at the Broderson Trail, we had some signs for distancing and for people to wear their masks. Mm-hmm. And the signs have been down for weeks. People tore them down, and they tore down some handmade ones. And I've contacted Public Works and other people, and I haven't heard anything in a few weeks. And we're getting a lot more hikers out here. And so if you could help move that along and get us some official signs for the trailheads.
I know someone who knows someone who can look into that. So I know Mr. Fixler is lurking out there, and I'm sure he's in fact by now written that down on his pad of paper, if not in fact sent an email to the appropriate staff.
Okay, well, and I had before John Diodati's daughter and other kids at the middle school had made signs, but I would like to request that we get the same ones that are on Bishop Peak and those areas. They're bigger and the county logo is bigger, and so they look more official. But that would be appreciated.
All right, all I'm sure taken in by Mr. Fixler.
Thank you, Mr. Fixler.
He is on
Okay.
mute, sorry.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the CSD report. Do we have somebody here from the CSD?
Chuck is here.
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Good
great.
evening.
Good evening. With the turnover of the new year, the CSD is set to elect new officers, and particularly I would like to announce that we have openings on some of our committees. We have several advisory committees to the board: Emergency Services, Parks and Recreation, Finance, and Utility Advisory Committee. And particularly openings in utility advisories and emergency services. We haven't had much of an active emergency services committee the past year or so. With all the wildfires, it's hard to get together with the fire department. But we're going to reactivate that committee, and we have openings there. And with the utility advisory committees, applications are on the CSD's website. I would also like to just address the infrastructure issues that CSDs everywhere face. We've heard some talk about investment and commitment on the part of the water purveyors, and we've had our issues with wells recently. 3rd Street well was down for a chromium 6 reading for a while. That standard seems to have been renegotiated. We are up and running with the 3rd Street well. Our 10th Street well had some issues. It's back up and running. All of these have allowed us to take pressure off the Palisades well, which is our primary well by the library, but it's also the well at the forefront of saltwater intrusion. So with all of these other wells working, the South Bay well, we've just completed an infrastructure program. You probably saw pipes coming down Napomo Avenue a while back, crossing 10th Street there. We've put that well into the gravity zone instead of the pressure zone. It's now a much more efficient well. All of this is good in terms of basin management. We're about ready to take on a couple of, one, we're ready to begin construction of a Program C project, the 8th Street well, Upper Aquifer well. In conjunction with the county, we received a grant from the state, and we'll be at long last putting that. We have one well there already, and we're going to be expanding that well to a different level of the aquifer. And that'll be set to go to construction right after the first of the new year. You heard about another brand new Program C well that we are going to be putting up in the Bayview Heights area on CSD property. We have already started the environmental reviews for that project. It doesn't look like there's anything that is going to really stand in the way of implementing the next Program C well there. I know there was some concern to the community. We looked at sites out on the other side of South Bay Boulevard and some residential areas. We also looked over by the middle school, and that was our first choice. And we came up empty there because the groundwater basin just daylighted before we knew that it did there, which kind of highlights the uncertainty of trying to develop sustainable yields for basins. Your knowledge of the groundwater basin is only as good as the number of holes that you have drilled in it. It's a kind of a science and art combined. But with all that said, we're in good position. We have the funding to carry on with our programs. And I'm going to get back to the program A and C issues in a moment when I talk about the community plan and the CSD's response to the community plan. As many of you know, we've sent a letter to the county. And I'm going to paraphrase a lot of that letter here. The primary goal of the Los Osos Basin Plan is to halt seawater intrusion into the groundwater basin and provide sustainable water supply for the community. Much of the Basin Plan's focus is on ensuring a viable water supply for the existing businesses and residences. It is very specific on the programs and projects meant to stabilize the basin for existing water users and which are to support and to be paid for by new development. This is where the community plan update and the narrative and water analysis in Appendix D are not in sync with the Basin Plan. Appendix D of the community plan contains the water data and information and justifications to support new development within the groundwater basin. The water resource section is fairly complicated, but the following are the district's key concerns. The first is the interpretation and use of the 4 metrics in the Basin Plan. And you heard some discussion about metrics earlier tonight. The Basin Plan only highlights the basin yield metric. The purpose of the 4 metrics, which would be basin yield, chloride, water level, and nitrates, are to help the purveyors understand how the basin responds to actions being taken and should be reflected as a whole, not on an individual basis. And this is really important because the sustainable yield is a theoretical metric. It is what we think we can pump from the basin. And then again, we're backing that off to 80% of what we think we can pump and have a sustainable basin. That is the one of those 4 metrics that is theoretical, not measurable. Chloride, water level, and nitrates we can measure. And as you heard from Supervisor Gibson, those metrics all took a step back in last year's annual report. We have been making progress in all of those 7, 8 years ago when water conservation was big. The drought maybe effects weren't quite as noticed as they are now. Those things take a while to develop, and we're heading back into another drought. So the fact that we have stepped back from meeting the chloride and water level and nitrate metrics, even though we've met the basin yield metric, maybe calls into question the basin yield metric. In the Basin Plan, that annual report, there was a reference to perhaps not meeting the water level metric until 2033. Second issue to the CSD is the reference to the programs for immediate implementation, mainly programs A and C in Appendix D. These are intended to stabilize water supply for the existing customers, not for new development as implied. That new program C well, that is to meet the needs of the existing customers. And again, the implementation of a plan does not guarantee the success of the plan. So the fact that we implement programs and drill new wells doesn't guarantee success. We have to wait until the metrics, the chloride, water level, and nitrate metrics are met. Again, another point with Appendix D in the community plan, there's a lack of acknowledgement that there needs to be a funding mechanism. And we heard Supervisor Gibson address this earlier tonight, but it's not in the plan yet. There needs to be a funding mechanism for new development to pay its fair share for the past and future investments in water supply sustainability. This is a huge issue because to this point, existing ratepayers have paid for all the improvements, and new development will take advantage of some of those existing improvements. Another point, there is a need to update the county's recycled water management plan. And regarding the use of the recycled water, the recycled water is the most important management tool we have for this basin. Whether it makes sense for sea pines to receive a huge portion of that water when they could be using the zone seawater, which is high in nitrates and we can't drink it. maybe that's, there just needs to be a revisitation, and the county has shown some willingness to do that. We need to proceed with that. There needs to be a reconciliation between the level of severity 3 in the resource management summary report and the interpretation of the basin yield metric in Appendix D. Seems to be a conflict, since one is saying based on the basin yield metric, there is water available to allocate to new development, but on the other hand, level of severity 3 indicates the opposite. It's confusing and needs to be reconciled. As stated in our draft letter, the district is neither advocating for or against new development, but we are asking the Board of Supervisors to delay a decision until the time when the details of the water purveyors of concerns can be worked out. Should it get down to not issuing will serves, we should have this worked out before that. We believe that this dialogue, there's a viable path forward for the community in regards to water sustainability and future growth. And that's it. I'll take questions. Thank you.
We
Are
have
any LOCAC members? No? Okay.
We have
So-
2 community members. The first one was Back Bay, but they just put their hand down. The second one is Patrick McGibney.
Thank you. Mr. Sasena, I have a question for you regarding the basin plan. Maybe Supervisor Gibson could help with this also. I know one of the things that the BMC is doing is monitoring the basin. So you do so by how much water each purveyor's customers are using. And then you come out with a metric on what sustainable yield is. And Supervisor Gibson has mentioned that our sustainable yield has been higher than our use has been. But if all we're monitoring are the customers of the purveyors, we don't really know how much water is being used on private wells, and they're not metered. So if you don't know what that well use is, how can you come out with a sustainable yield and know if you are above or below that?
I think that's a good question, Patrick. We've advocated for monitoring of private wells. It's a sensitive issue. California seems to be behind a lot of other states in that regard. A lot of places you drill a well and you get an allocation along with that well. We're not there yet. And it does add, I mean, there are ways to estimate agricultural use and private water use. But again, they're estimations. And as we're shown with our estimated basin safe yield, those estimates are what they are.
Well, and I'll add, if I might, the estimated uses in the non-purveyor areas of the basin are based on known factors for the amount of agricultural use, fairly well-known averages for what residential use is on large parcels, and I think the basic uncertainty in that has been determined to be relatively low compared to the effect. If we're estimating about 800 acre feet per year in the non-purveyor parts of the basin, that's been established. That was also established to avoid dragging each and every individual well owner into the adjudication process, which would be expensive for them and expensive for the water purveyors as well. So as we look at the management tools that we have, the model that we have, the 800-foot average is again by the technical experts thought to be a reasonable average. And at this point, yeah, it'd be great to actually monitor each and every well. That's an expensive and long process, but the actual management of the basin doesn't crucially depend on that, again, the reasonable uncertainty of that estimate as we see it now. That said, one of the things that's in front of us is the question of improving the sophistication of the model that's used to characterize the basin, from which sustainable yield is developed and different projects can be assessed as to their effectiveness in driving us toward the goals we want. There's a cost associated with that, even though there's a substantial grant available. And again, basically the water purveyors have to decide that they want to invest that money to have more sophisticated modeling of the basin. It's in that more sophisticated modeling, I think, that we could determine whether anything needs to change in terms of the estimate for the non-purveyor production in the basin.
Thank you. The Back Bay back has a question.
Well,
There you go. Okay.
okay.
My question is for Bruce, and I'm glad that you're considering the cost to the owners of these large properties. Some of these large properties are not tied into the sewer, and so they have not been paying what we've been paying over the years. There's an advertisement that came up on our Support Los Osos Facebook page that shows a large property with acres of green grass on it. And I don't think they're hooked up to the sewer. So I'm wondering if that really is a good consideration, that the expense of monitoring their wells would be a hardship, because all of us in the prohibition zone, except for some that I learned recently on private roads that aren't on acres, are not hooked up to the sewer. So they don't have that cost. And so I think that would be a fair cost for them to share in maintaining our aquifer.
Yeah, that might well be, and that's what I was referencing in my first set of comments, was that, for instance, and indeed those large parcels east of South Bay generally aren't connected to the sewer, and the sewer ratepayers, have as part of paying their sewer rates, have created this recycled water system that's absolutely central to the overall success and sustainability of the basin. And it is no doubt that even now, other users in the basin outside the sewer zone are gaining benefit from the deployment of that recycled water. So that was what I was saying, is in terms of certain costs that the prohibition zone is bearing, the sewer, let me call it, the prohibition zone needs to go away. This is the sewer service area. Those costs do need to be spread over all basin users, and that's a 218 process. But we've got to, the purveyors are interested in in other investments in their infrastructure, and they want to consider those as part of the overall funding mechanism. That's fine, but we're certainly cognizant of the issue that you bring up. And
Right.
monitoring, the cost of metering and monitoring might be part of that discussion.
Right. And some of the property I'm specifically speaking of with all the acres of green grass is off Pecho, and it's not east. We also have properties, in the middle of our neighborhoods that are not hooked up. One person has told me he wants to hook up, but the county will not allow him to hook up, and he's on Pecho. In a neighborhood. And so why would that be, that they can't hook up to the sewer when they want to?
Because because of the permit of the issued by the Coastal Commission, that the sewer service area is defined as the urban services line. And we did make one adjustment to that to bring the Monarch subdivision into the service area, but that made sense as it was a densely developed neighborhood with a collection system and further benefits to the overall water balance. I think as we go down the line, there's a possibility of considering that, but it's a complicated land use issue that has to be run through the Coastal Commission since they issued the permit. And again, knowing the complete impact to the basin depends on what level of what aquifer the water is being drawn from. but just know that when we look at the situation of water demand in the basin, again, outside the purveyors where we're not metered, we need to talk about averages. And so one individual property who might be irrigating a large lawn doesn't necessarily shift the overall impact of production significantly one way or the other.
Right.
Well, and I did want to say the home on Petcho, not the big property that's being sold, they're right next to Monarch Grove School, and they're also right next to, smaller lots in Cuesta by the Sea. Is there no sewer line there on Petcho for all the other people?
Well, again, there is a carve out of those larger lots between Monarch School and the Tri-W site.
It's not those lots. It's
well,
not.
I don't have the picture in front of me, but they are not in the sewer zone. To bring them into the sewer zone will require a long conversation about land use and coastal permits and a number of other things. I don't think that we're necessarily opposed to considering that, as the sewer plant certainly has capacity for that. But
I'm just wondering what steps would my friend take to be able to get that moving?
He can certainly contact my office, and we'll get him in touch with Public Works and continue the discussion.
Okay, thank
Great.
you, Bruce.
Thank you. And thanks for the CSD report. Let's move on to the chamber report, Lynette.
Yes, on a very different and cheerful note, I'm the secretary on the chamber, and I would like to announce that we have our tree lit at the corner of Palisades and LOVR. That's our annual Christmas tree lighting, but there was no event connected to it this year, nor will we be able to have our Christmas parade. What we're doing in place of that is we're having a Light Up Los Osos event where businesses and homes are asked to submit their houses for consideration in our contest. There is a prize from local businesses, $150 prize gift basket. So to find out more information about this, please go to our Facebook page. That's really where the pertinent information is. If you just look up LOBP Chamber, search that, you can find it, or Los Osos Baywood Park Chamber of Commerce. So please go to our website and take a look at that. The contest will be judged on December 18th. And the prize will be presented on Monday, the 21st. And I'm hoping we will have something going on Facebook at that time. So check there. And until we know what is going on with vaccines, I'm afraid we can't really tell you about any future events the chamber would like to put on, but is unable to at the moment. And so if you have any questions, I'm here.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Doesn't look like there's any questions, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Jim has a question. Jim?
Wait to unmute him.
Hold on, Jim, you're still muted.
I'm looking for him. Where did you go? Oh, laptop. Okay.
All right. So approval of the minutes. Do we have?
Wait,
motion?
Jim's still muted.
No,
I think
just
he's trying to talk.
Yeah,
There
I
he is.
guess I'm back.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, I just wanted to move approval of the minutes.
Oh,
and
okay.
thank our friend Sue for the outstanding job she does. Not only minutes, but setting up the agenda and the Zoom and all that. That's a lot of
Absolutely.
work, and she needs to be commended.
Thank you, Jim, very much.
Thank you. Keep it
This is Jan, and I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right. So we can move on to the treasurer's report.
All right, we have $617.90. The Chamber of Commerce check had been cashed as of the last meeting, but I just don't see the bank statements till later. So that's out. I have a check that I need to get to Sandra, and that's pretty much it. I submitted a budget for our needs next year, and I guess, you know, I'm just kind of guessing, but I hope that we can do in-person meetings at some point next year, and I'm hoping we'll run the election next year.
Right.
So that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. And so committee reports. I guess we'll start with, let's do land use last. Let's do traffic and circulation.
Nothing going on here.
All right. Trees and landscape, Yale.
We've been meeting regularly, and our main project is the El Moro bicycle and pedestrian trail. The county park and rec are seemingly having hard time with funding due to the COVID pandemic this year. So they do like the project that we've submitted, but there is a lot of hoops to jump through, and we're trying to work out a smaller project, and that's still in a going. But we do have a group of people that are very ready and, you know, like to do something. So we have very clear understanding of what we want to start with, and that's what we are working with the Park and Rec on.
Okay. And outreach, do we have anything, Sandra, on that?
Nope, other than the news, the newsletter that we put out, and yeah, can't really do
And
anything
it's
else.
also very good. So we want to commend Sandra for that.
Right.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can organize some kind of event next year, but
Yeah, yeah.
And Yale, do you have anything to add with the unhoused residents forum?
Yeah, and we'll probably use that for the outreach, yeah. So the forum is scheduled to be on January 26th. It's Tuesday between 6 and 8:30, of course, via Zoom. And we're still working on the panel and how we would like the format of the forum to be. And we have about maybe 70 or 80% of the panelists decided and confirmed. We will probably need a different kind of a Zoom system. And I was going to ask maybe Bruce or Blake can let us know whether the county has the one that is what you call it?
Webinar format.
Webinar type, exactly, so that we can use it for the forum. Can you make any comments in that regard? Will be great. But we're working our way. It's coming together. The group is working really well together. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we'll go to Mr. Larry Bender for the land use, the consent agenda items.
Okay. Well, we had a real busy meeting just this past Monday, and we had some items we put on the consent agenda. One, just in addition to a house of 180 square feet. Another for a fencing issue that we thought was appropriate. And a vacation rental that met all the guidelines and stuff that the CSD, or not the CSD, that LOCAC has come up with, and the public. And so those are the consent agenda items. We had one issue, and I've got to talk to the water purveyors. Chuck, you're going to be getting an email from me about one project, and that includes 10 units. So that's going to be using water. But otherwise, that was it.
A motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. It's Chris.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, are there any comments regarding any of these things? Any questions from the public regarding these items?
Done.
Okay. So let's move on to the regular agenda item. So Mr. Jeff Krebs had requested LOCAC to write a letter to the County Planning and Building Department regarding the need for a better plan for neighborhood bicycle and pedestrian safety. And Jeff, are you with
There
us
is
tonight?
a person called just Jeff.
I assume that's Jeff.
I have asked him to unmute.
Okay. If he wants to talk about this agenda item.
How's that?
I can hear you. How you doing, Jeff? Good evening.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for putting this on the agenda.
Mhm.
I think as some of you may know, I've pretty much been following a lot of the circulation matters pretty much all the way for this community plan, back through the EIR, through the Planning Commission, and now we've made a lot of changes, worked with Public Works and planning both, and the planning commissioners did make some changes. And I think the biggest aha, and I pointed this out to you folks last meeting, to me was through this whole process, there was zero review of pedestrian or bicycle safety on streets. It was kind of off the plot. And that, when we start looking at adding more cars in any fashion where we're already concerned about safety, it certainly seemed appropriate that work needed to be understood and plans put in place to mitigate that if there's going to be increased risks and hampering that. And actually planning put something in the plan, or the commissioners did, I guess, but we kind of navigated around that there now is a planning item that says there will be a pedestrian and an active planning item or a plan put in place. The problem with that is what I specifically wanted was we want those, but we want to make sure that they're done before you go start putting more cars on the road. The issue is, well, we don't have any funding to do this, or we don't know where funding is going to come from. Well, that's kind of, in my mind, that's an important component to decide to go forward with new growth. And you can almost use some of the same words that Supervisor Gibson was saying for water, that you needed to have some, things to keep the quality of life and sustainability, that you weren't going to hamper existing people. And whether you were using the word water purveyor, you could actually use the word county needs to make sure that the streets are safe. So the only thing that I've actually did submit another letter to the supervisors that'll go to them, and I think it went in today or yesterday perhaps. It's a lot more detailed than I'm asking you to do, but all I'm asking, suggesting is that you support that those two planning items it is imperative to get them done and completed so we understand what those risks are before essentially new growth starts. I'm most worried, I mean, I live down in the El Moro area, and I think, I believe that area actually may be the worst compromised area because we're between two different central business districts, if you will. And Morro Shores scares the heck out of me that if we don't have some stuff, it's gonna really damage this area. So I prepared a letter. I'm just trying to figure out, we need to do this fast because the meeting's coming up. It's a suggested letter. It looks like the last sentence, I didn't get all the words right, but all that's doing is suggesting those two planning items really, LOCAC suggests they need to be accomplished before new growth begins.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Gail?
Thank you, Jeff. I did not see your letter. So how can you improve safety for pedestrians in the Baywood Elmore area? I mean, what did you suggest there? I mean, I would like to hear some of your ideas.
They're not ideas. That's actually
concrete.
what the county needs to do, is come up with a plan of what the impact is. I mean, you could go and do a study, and if you actually look at this is an important component to all of the communities, probably across the United States, but I focus in California. Unfortunately, San Luis Obispo County is behind the 8 ball on a lot of these communities. They're all look a little different. It's, it's not all cookie cutter. Everybody's kind of has to adapt to their situation, but there's this Complete Streets Act, and there's the AB 742 that actually is mandating to the counties that they needed to come up with ways to essentially to get better multimodal transportation, get people out of cars is essentially part of the thing. Part of it has to do with greenhouse gas saving, and we just didn't do any of it. And the other aspect, and I'll go down this rabbit trail a little bit, but I didn't want to put it in your letter, but frankly, the loss of service that and unfortunately you go to Public Works, who's responsible, but Public Works wasn't all involved because there was a consultant did it. And so you kind of go back and forth with this thing. But the way the model is put together, it did not evaluate the streets properly, even from a vehicle impact. And so I laid that out for essentially the supervisors to figure out how they want to deal with that. But I've kind of rabbit trailed. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, did you send us the letter? Because I did not see a letter that you want us to support. Or you want us to write the letter, or you want us to support a letter that you wrote? I don't exactly understand. What are you asking us?
Well, it's in your pre-read material.
Oh, it is there? I'm sorry.
It's been there for, I think it was the first thing put in there. I put it in a couple of weeks ago suggesting a suggested letter. And I'm happy for you to do it any way you want to do it. I was just trying to make it easy on everybody.
That's my bad. That's my bad, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. That's super informative. And I'm glad you did all that work. And I'm wondering how, SLOCOG plays into this as far as, I know you're saying Public Works is doing it, but because I know SLOCOG deals a lot with transportation and circulation, and if they.
I'll voice on that, because I do know it's interesting. On my last deal with the Planning Commission, I'm not sure it was planning, responding, or Public Works, but there were several points that I was pointing out. One of them is a support letter from SLOCOG that this is on the circulation component, not on the pedestrian component, that they think that was all done fine. When I spoke actually with a SLOCOG representative, what was real interesting to me, they don't look at local roads. And local roads is a county policy, a county administered deal. What they're interested in, and I'm ad-libbing here, but I think what they're interested in is the connector points for regional transportation. And so frankly, if I looked at Los Osos Valley Road, it's probably up to plan standards and everything else. And we got, medians and sidewalks and all kinds of good stuff there, and, signals. And so I'm just conjecturing on the SLOCOG standpoint, they look at that in South Bay and say, yeah, interconnections, everything looks fine. But they're not going to look at El Moro, a local road coming down here.
But they would look at the potentially the impacts of what new growth would have on those pedestrians.
No, that is not correct. None of the traffic circulation looks at impact on when I say pedestrians, I mean pedestrians that have to use road surface because we don't have sidewalks or a path. So they aren't looking, the model is not set up to look at any pedestrian impact or congestion impact because there's pedestrians and bikes on that same piece of road countywide. And that's partially an issue for supervisors to grapple with. That's, you know, I mean, in some fashion, Public Works just has to deal with the rules they have to deal with. But at the same time, they do have to deal with AB, 743, and I believe they needed to have done this.
Okay. So us as LOCAC members, is this something that we want to advocate, write a letter, suggest? I mean, it sounds like we're all for pedestrian safety and bicycle use, right, on the, especially the side roads. I mean, there's kids that need to walk to school. There's people that are walking their dogs. I mean, as we grow as a community, we're going to want it to be as safe as possible.
Yeah, all you're really advocating, because they've already said they're going to do the plan someday. I mean, they didn't say someday. Again, I'm ad-libbing, but you look in there, trails also says they're going to do all these trails. That same plan has been there since 2008, and they haven't done it because they haven't got funding. And so all you're advocating in the letter is a suggestion that from a community standpoint, we think it's important that this is done before new growth.
I have, okay.
Go ahead, Larry.
Tim, when you get a chance, I want to talk.
Go ahead, Larry.
Okay. I have an issue of tying this in. I am for pedestrian and bicycle safety, but tying it into further growth here in Los Osos. Because again, if there's not the money for it, and I was behind the bike path up El Moro that led to the middle school, and that took us years and years to get done, but it finally did. That it couldn't support a letter that tied it into the future growth of our town. These are important things. I think as members of the town, we have to come up with what's important for us, not for what the county comes up with or, some study comes up with. We have to come up with what's important. Where do we need the safety for us? Again, when my kids were going to school, it was Santa Isabel, so they could walk up and down there safely. There is a walk path there now. And then for my kids to get to the middle school. And so that they put the pathway on El Moro. Those were the important things for us. County didn't come up with that stuff. The community came up with safe walkways. They built Monarch School, I'm sure there's probably safe walkways there that could be done, but the community has to come up with these things. And then
go ahead. Sorry.
So it's just to tie it into future growth. I don't think it's there. I think it's important. We should write a letter and let the supervisors know that we're concerned about pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, and how and look at ways to improve it and this for the supervisors to support anything that the community may come up with. But that's as far as I'm willing to go.
Yeah, let me add a little bit more. I think in talking with planning, when kind of going through some of the navigation of this, actually it was suggested and was welcomed and needed that we would need community participation in doing these things. I mean, I live on 4th Street and we've got Morro Shores there. I think if you somebody looked at safe standards right now, it's probably an unsafe situation being with driveways coming out, the terrain, it's like more than 5%. They couldn't put speed humps on it because it was too dangerous to put speed humps on it. And now you're looking to potential, without having that identified as something that needs to be corrected before you allow new growth to go forward, come up with some plan. If they can't come up with a plan, I assume they're going to be able to, but if you can't come up with a plan, then boy, you don't have any business growing there because you're penalizing your existing customer almost along the same principle as water. Why are you going to take the water away from the existing customer until you know you can do it? So in my mind, you actually have to understand the stress that'll go on the system. And if it's beyond acceptable standards, and you have to define what's going to be an acceptable standard, but if it's beyond an acceptable standard, they got to come up with a solution before you can proceed, or you're penalizing the guy that lives on whatever street it is. And those kids that live there are trying to use the bikeways. So I mean, it's up to you guys. I've put it in what I think needs to be done, and I'm pretty set that that's an important component.
Annette?
Thanks, Tim. I wonder if we could ask Bruce, what is the nexus between new growth and money going into building things like this when a lot of places opted not to have sidewalks to begin with? They didn't pay for them. There's streets that aren't paved because the people who bought the property there did not want to pay for it. So I'm wondering, what is the obligation of the county when people have already turned down paying for things like this? Why should new growth have to pay for stuff that old growth never wanted to pay for in the beginning? And maybe there's some legality. Maybe Bruce has some kind of an answer between a nexus of us asking for something and the county providing it.
Well, you need to
Somebody unmute Bruce.
unmute Gibson, please.
Yeah, he's been asked to unmute.
Is he still here?
Yes.
He was asked to unmute, but
He's not
I guess we can,
let me share one other aspect just to come to that point. If you look at the active transportation plan just for the city of San Luis Obispo, they've got what, 45,000 people. We've got a third of theirs, but we're on a more concentrated place. They've got a very defined plan with much more limited traffic that's allowed. And essentially when new development does need to go forward, they actually have a development fee when it's going to affect, in other words, the new developer has to build to current standards. But now that you've evolved with an old standard, if that's going to be impacted further by new development because they're using that, they're using the parks or whatever the infrastructure resource is, they actually have a development fee that they can impose or on to help contribute.
Sorry, I
to
stepped
fix
away
the
from the computer for a minute. What can I do for you?
Lynette had a question regarding the.
Hang on, sorry. My sound was muted. Go ahead.
Do you want me to
Lynette, you wanna-
explain it?
Yes.
Okay, my question was, a lot of people who bought property here opted not to pay to pave the street. They opted not to pay for sidewalks. So why would new development be asked to pay for things like this? Or why would the county be asked to pay for things like this when people initially did not want to pay for it and didn't pay for it? But you do see on LOVR, there's weird strips of sidewalk because they were allowed only to develop with a weird strip of sidewalk in front of their particular plot of property. I could see new development having to pay for something like that, but would it even make sense? But I guess my question is, was there any nexus really between this, what Jeff is proposing, and county resources? I'm not sure what the nexus is.
I'm sorry I didn't hear exactly what Jeff's proposing, but if you're looking for an extensive and connected series of pedestrian paths, let's say sidewalks or bike lanes, those are really sort of fall into two different categories. If it's bike lanes, you know, especially separated bike lanes, we're going to need to find some funding to try external funding that goes through the Council of Governments, the transportation funding mechanisms. It's called active transportation, and it's that those kinds of funds are in very short supply. Sidewalks, the nexus is that new development creates more need to get people from one place to another. And to the extent we can do that with walking, we save on the impacts of cars on the street. And so that's generally a benefit. But the improvement of sidewalks is controlled by the land use plan. And there are places where the plan goes through and says in this particular area, and it typically ends up being closer to downtowns, we think new development needs to improve, you know, provide a sidewalk as part of their development plan. The county, post Prop 13, the county does not have any funds to simply build sidewalks where there aren't sidewalks now. And so we fully understand that, you know, we fully understand that in places where those sidewalks weren't built when the first development went in, there may be a hole. And, you know, how you address that is a struggle. It goes back to my previous comments. Asking somebody to pay for something is always a challenge.
That's not really that's not really the issue that I think we're talking about, Bruce. To try to summarize it is, there are places without sidewalks. A lot of them that I'm speaking of are local roads that aren't intended for through traffic. They're not the collector streets,
right?
But pedestrians, bicyclists, I mean, people that live on the streets, pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars all share those. And when we have new development, those same streets that are already impacted today, and we just got to live with what we got, are we expected to just suck it up and expect more cars and just not walk?
Well, so the short answer is yes, there will be more cars. We're not going to, you know, we can only make new development pay, if you're talking about sidewalks, for a sidewalk in front of its parcel. Now, if that parcel is in an area where there are no sidewalks and there's lots of development, you know, the plan will go through and say sidewalks are not required here, because doing the infill lots and putting sidewalks in the infill lots doesn't solve the problem, right? The county doesn't have money to come in and put in sidewalks where they don't exist right now. And so basically, yes, we give up on the idea that that neighborhood would have sidewalks. As to the cars, each parcel that develops in Los Osos does pay a road impact fee. Those monies are collected. And for instance, when we put the signal in at Palisades and LOVR, that was paid for by accumulated road impact fees, augmented with some other funds.
Yeah, well, I hope I submitted a letter to you, to the supervisors. I hope you read it a little fairly carefully. You will find, I don't know if I refer into there, but even the city of San Luis does have the ability to help existing areas that are getting impacted by new development. And if and it's generally a safety deal, or it's a resource, you know, impact, like parks. If parks are going to be overused now because people are coming through an existing area, there's a variety of reasons. So
yeah, we do. We charge impact fees for parks, for general government, for law enforcement, for fire, for libraries, and for roads, and those are all collected. In terms of pedestrian connections, I mean, the one possibility is what's called the safe routes to school. If there's a nexus to getting kids to school, we can bring in extra money. But just, you know, just to be honest, I certainly will read what you submitted. But just to be honest with you, the county is not going to have money in the general fund to put out to create sidewalks in existing neighborhoods.
So the only thing that I have asked myself to do, or what my letter is asking, because the plan is now just putting in place, the community plan is asked to put together a pedestrian plan with there's no funding behind that, but at least understand it and put together an active transportation plan, but there's no time frame.
Right.
And all I've been asking is let's make sure we do that before there's new growth. So you're not extra impacting the safety on an existing community street.
That's
And
all.
if the sidewalk's not practical, then maybe that new growth shouldn't go there because you're putting that one, whatever community in jeopardy. You wouldn't want to do that.
Well, okay, we'll take that. We'll certainly take that as a comment. We're not going to be able to prohibit new growth based on the fact that there's not sidewalks in a neighborhood. We will charge them their road impact fees to mitigate, in general, the amount of cars that are circulating in Los Osos. But that money gets spent within Los Osos, not necessarily on the street where that development goes. And that nexus is well established. So that's how that system works at this point.
All right. Sue, you had a question?
Yes, so Supervisor Gibson, if there is no ability to do those kind of studies or follow through with this plan, how would you suggest Jeff or we or anybody from Los Osos would go about trying to make a difference in this area?
Well, you know, so the community plan, and Carrie can speak a little bit more to it if she has something to add. You know, we identify bike paths, you know, a variety of bike paths. Well, we'll identify a bike path along LOVR, for instance, from, you know, connecting it with the class 2 bike in the downtown business area, try to get it out to Monarch Grove. We have a plan that shows a variety of those kinds of features. There's no timeline in it because right now there is no significant funding mechanism, but we want it there so that, for instance, we don't do some other kind of development that cuts that off and makes it impossible to do in the future. You know, the reality is with transportation funding and a variety of things that would require a whole boring hour at whiteboard to detail, we just don't have money, you know, coming from the state or the federal government to invest in these things very often. And so we scrimp and save. Now, if the community of Los Osos wanted to, you know, create an assessment district for pedestrian and bicycle improvements, you know, and charge every parcel $25 a year to put in a pot, you could raise a whole lot of money. But doing that would require going to the ballot on a Prop 218, and you'd probably need 2/3 vote to put that in. So that's, you know, that's the challenge we are, and it's all post Prop 13. Pre-Prop 13, you know, whatever governing body, the Board of Supervisors in this instance, would decide what they wanted to see happen in the various communities and raise property tax rates at their set property tax rates at a level that would generate the money to get those things done. Post Prop 13, the amount of money is fixed, and we have to then decide what we can get done with the money that we have. And that's why there are a lot of unpaved roads in Los Osos where others are paved. That was done long ago and pre-Prop 13.
Okay, well, anybody have anything else to add on LOCAC?
I still think that a letter like that should be going in with our support, regardless of what's the outcome. And I hear what Supervisor Gibson says, and maybe in few years, a few months or something, somebody will come up with some source of funding for that. So I think that, or just the awareness of the safety of pedestrians should be there, but via, speed allowance in the neighborhood, more signs for lower speed, or whatever it is necessary, or one-way street. I don't know. That's
All we're asking for is the plans to be put in place.
Yeah.
We're not asking for it all to be done.
I know, but what plan? You're not. I read your letter. There is no specific request, and so it's.
I think this is like the beginning of a discussion is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I understand the idea of it, but not the specific. So it's a bit difficult, but I still think we should support something like that.
It's the pedestrian and active transportation plan is what's being asked for, potentially, right, in the letter, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And again, it's already in the plan. I'm just saying we need to ask to make sure it's done before new growth happens. Maybe there aren't any ahas out of the plan and they just go forward. But if you find something that, oh, whoa, this is a bad situation, then that probably causes people to think about it and figure out, is there a way to work this? Or maybe there needs to be a development fee, or, I can't say, because I don't know what the plan would say or what risk it would find. Maybe it says everything's great.
It seems to me that we've got an issue here
Cars
that
on the road.
must be a traffic and circulation committee. Seems to be the logical place to explore this issue and come up with a specific thing that we can pass on. We know we're not going to be able to get it done. I think have a document that goes forward as we want people to pay attention is all Jeff is asking, I think. But I'd like to see it fleshed out a little bit. Jan, I don't know if your committee would spend some time on this, but it would be helpful. You put this kind of thing in front of a committee of 11, it just takes a lot of time, and I'm not sure we're going to get there tonight. I'd really like to refer this to the Traffic and Circulation Committee.
Okay, but this is Jan, and Traffic and Circulation has looked a lot at all kinds of modalities in Los Osos. What Jeff is talking about is with the plan, the community plan, they have an action plan for pedestrian. And what he's asking is, does LOCAC want to support getting that information before any kind of growth? And so it seems to me that we're not in agreement on that. I think each of us on our own can write a letter. We all have Jeff's letter. We can take that and write it as a person, a citizen. It's just that it
has more impact when it comes from LOCAC.
Exactly. And that's why Jeff brought it to us. And that's why he's asking, would we support getting the action plan before any development happens? But, as Larry said, he doesn't want to hinge that on whether growth can happen or not happen, whether a plan happens, because there's no monies. And, Bruce brought that to everybody's attention also. So, we can certainly support multimodalities and safety. And, maybe that we do a generic letter to that. I don't know. It seems to me that if somebody's—
we're all in support of generic letter that just speaks to the concept generally. But, that's going to be helpful. I don't know. Let's throw it out.
Sandra?
Well, I was just going to say, I think we all support this idea of having a pedestrian and active transportation plan, and the disagreement is it being conditional to new growth happening. So if we change a word in the letter, because he says—
That's why a committee ought to be working on this.
Well, but we don't, just hear me out for a second. Have the supervisors condition completing these plans prior to allowing new growth to proceed. Instead of that prior to allow, we can shift the wording that we just support this plan and it needs to happen simultaneous with new growth happening, and that needs to be taken account anytime new growth is being proposed, but not make it conditional. So I would say we could support, you know, the wording of like, we support this plan, we want these issues looked at, not necessarily before new growth happens, right? But to appease what was just been discussed. So that's my proposal. And maybe I can make a motion to that extent.
Before we make a motion, if we don't do it before the plan of growth is happening, then nobody's going to take it seriously. I think that the idea is we would like to add that many residents to hopefully to Los Osos. What do we do to create a safe pedestrian and traffic areas? So if we are not doing it before, there is not going to be funding allocated, even if there might be otherwise. We can ask for more than we think maybe we get. So I think the higher bar will probably be better. At least people will think about it. At least development will be thought of, not retrospective, but prior to. I think concomitant, how do you say it, in the same time, simultaneously, maybe is gonna be also okay, but not after. After the fact, it's not gonna happen. Just like it's not happening now.
Sandra, I second your motion. I know there is a little time limit because next week they're gonna be talking about this, and it'd be nice to have a letter from us in there. As Jan said, the multi-modality, you know, is important. I think it's important to a lot of folks here in Los Osos, and to word it in such a way that we let supervisors know it's important.
But what is the timing? What are we deciding about? Is it before, after, simultaneously?
It's getting them a notice before their next meeting, which is what, Tuesday?
Yeah.
You know, this is the 10th. It's going to be Tuesday. They're not going to have it done. They're not going to have it done Tuesday. They're not going to have it all decided and signed and passed and everything else.
I'm asking when is what you do not like the conditioning of before the growth plan. So I'm just asking. I think that Sandra suggested to change the wording. So what is the change of wording will look like? That's what I'm asking.
That we support a plan of this sort. We support multimodal travel. We want these issues looked at anytime new growth is happening. It's more of just raising the awareness, right? We want this. We want you guys to pay attention to this aspect of it, without saying it has to happen before new growth happens, but in conjunction with.
All right.
If that.
All right, well, we have a motion then in a second.
Second.
All right.
It will be easier to second if we see it exactly. So it's still not.
It sounds to me like it's just not conditional upon growth. It doesn't have to happen before it. It just means it's to raise awareness and to make it a point that it is something that's important to the community, is to have these bicycle and pedestrian safety in mind.
I'm not on mute.
So it's not something that has to be done before growth can happen.
And let's remember that this is our recommendation to the Board of Supes. So, I mean, it's just something that's important to us, and then we want them to know that.
Well, it's important to me to have it done before new growth, before more shores coming down 4th Street. I'll tell you.
So do we vote to shift the wording? Sorry, Jeff, without that.
I mean, now
What's the shift?
I've given my pitch. You guys have to do what you want to do.
What is the shifted wording? Yeah, I mean, I understand it's late in the meeting, but what?
We can work on it, but the idea that it won't be conditioned, it as a condition. prior
Then it
to-
doesn't have teeth. Okay.
We can fix the wording after.
We have to have some teeth in it. Some.
Of course.
Just keep it in mind. All right. So I'll second it. I mean, it's better than not having a support, and people can send their own letters as well. But I think that.
Could somebody just read out what the proposition is so that it's real clear, so the poor minute taker could know what the actual wording is?
Yes.
So I'm reading the letter. It says, upon raising this concern, the latest revision, the Los Osos community plan to add an item in the plan implementation section to complete a pedestrian and active transportation plan. So one of the items is that we support this pedestrian and active transportation plan, that we want it to happen sooner rather than later, as new growth is starting to come to the forefront, and that we support multimodal, whatever the language Jan used on that.
Well, it has there raise awareness regarding inequity of metrics used to vehicle modality, so we can support that. Doesn't have any time. And they have the supervisors condition completion these plans prior to allowing new growth. That's what you want to modify, right?
Yes.
So have the supervisors implementing those needs, while
we support the pedestrian and active transportation plan, and that it should happen once the community plan is adopted.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
Done.
You'll have years to fight for it, Jeff, if you ever getting.
And it can be on a condition by condition situation as we see growth happening and the impacts, as Larry was saying, from the community perspective of advocating.
Okay, since we have a second, can we vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, all in favor of that wording?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, I guess we can move forward with
I'd
that.
just like to say as an add-on here is that this is a terrible way to do business. I think that our chairman, in the time a request is made of this body to support a letter, ought to be directed to one of our committees of the appropriate committee. Try to work out these kind of details and bring a finished product to the board that makes it a little easier to work through.
I agree. I think that's
letters.
absolutely what should happen, but
Yeah.
it sounds like this is going forward on Tuesday, so
Yeah,
time is
it's
of the
okay.
essence.
That's what we do.
Yep,
But I'm just saying in the future, let's try to do that.
absolutely.
Okay, this is Jan, and if you have a real firm feeling on this, Jeff's letter went out to all of us. So I mean, as a citizen, submit something to the Board of Supervisors. I think the other thing that we need to remember is, like Larry said, what really makes things happen in Los Osos is when the community wants to build and make safe a walkway here or a bikeway there, or, I mean, it takes community involvement. It's not about us, putting our hand down or our fist down. It's about the community doing that. So, I mean, I really appreciate Jeff bringing this to our attention, because he really looks into all of this traffic and circulation and multimodal stuff big time, and trying to see what and how it'll affect stuff. But it really takes a community to do this stuff.
Amen.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, I agree with you. And
Yeah.
Jeff, thanks for all the hard work you're
You
doing.
have something to add?
Keep up with it.
Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to say that what Jan said is true. Supervisor Gibson has told us time and time and time again, if we want something done out here in our community, it all comes from us. You know, they're distracted. They've got a billion things that they're dealing with, and they don't have the money to do stuff. But when they find a cause that someone is passionate about, and someone has gone out and gotten other people involved, and they try to raise money, you know, it's amazing how quickly we can get some help financially from the county or emotionally, whatever. So I think that's a really good thing for us to listen to in all of this stuff. It's not about asking what the county can just do for us. It's we have to show interest and passion and want to get involved. And then it'll be nice to see how they might respond.
All right. All right, are there any public comments, items that are not on the agenda? We can move on to adoption of the bylaws and policies and procedure revisions.
I would like to send kudos off to the committee who worked on this, led by our esteemed Sandra. It's a job well done and very difficult task to pull together. So I'm really pleased that she took it on and did such a great job. And I would move that we approve the adoption of the bylaws and the policies and procedures.
All right, do we have a second?
Dave and Dave are really impressed, I guess. Well,
Trish, is the second.
the committee did amazing job. I mean, I was partially
Dave, I see you
involved,
guys.
but really great job.
Okay.
Trish, there's
are
Dave
we
Bolas.
done? I know, but are we done with
Okay,
the council first before we go to the public? I
I
see
think-
you, Dave. Just a moment.
I don't know if you want me to give any context or what things we changed or just go on to,
go on. I'm ready to vote on it.
okay.
I think we need a second.
We have a second.
I mean, I think they want to
I
say
see
something.
you, Dave, or just, this is Jeff's issue.
Okay,
they-
why don't
Let's,
you let them talk? Why don't you?
I am, just wait, please.
Okay. I am waiting.
I was trying to get the council done first before we go to the public.
Okay, I understand. Good thing. Thank you.
Jeff has been unmuted.
No, it's Dave Bolus, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you're unmuting me.
It's Dave Bolus that is asking to talk, Trish. You see his finger there? He's raising his hand.
I have clicked him 3 times.
Hello,
All right.
can you hear me?
Yes, Dave, yes.
Okay, I could not find the raise hand button, and I've had a message in there to Trish ever since Jeff started talking. This is a comment about Jeff's issue. It's not about what you're doing now. And I don't know why I couldn't get in there to make a comment when Jeff was doing his thing about the issue on the agenda. So that's what I'm irritated about at this moment. But what I'd like to say about Jeff's issue is that it seems to me that if there is in fact a road impact fee, and if it pays for roads for vehicles, that the county needs to recognize that in Los Osos, the roads are used by pedestrians and bicycles, and the roads are not as wide as they are in other parts of the county, and that some strange thing needs to happen in order to make that recognition have an effect. I mean, you know, road impact fees that only serve cars don't make any sense in most of Los Osos. As Lynette mentioned, we've got these little orphan pieces of sidewalk. And as we hear in the Traffic and Circulation Committee that I've been going to for 5 years now, a new development can only be made to put a sidewalk in front of its new development. So no wonder over there, there's a little stretch of sidewalk in front of the bank, and then people walk in the street for a while. Then there's another little piece of sidewalk in front of the next bank. Then you walk in the street for a while. Finally, there's another little piece of sidewalk. It doesn't make any sense to have a road impact fee that only implies cars. And that's what I'd like to say that has to do with Jeff's issue. And I'd also like to say that something's wrong if there's no button that you can push to raise your hand. So I was trying to make
Just
a
raise your
public
hand.
comment having to do with the last one. And as I said, I've gone to traffic and circulation for years. I know that the fees only apply, or the requirements for new development only apply out in the front yard of wherever the new development is. And that simply doesn't make any sense in Los Osos. So thanks very much for listening to me. And I'm sorry to cut in and interrupt the end of your meeting, but it just, you know, something's wrong about not being able to be recognized when you're trying to participate in a meeting. Thanks.
I don't see the raise hand on my right now either.
Yeah, where is it? I can't find it down there. All I
Go
can-
go to the bottom of your screen, and it'll say participants,
Yep,
and then click on participants,
yep.
and on the right side, it'll show all the people in it. And right at the bottom of that, it says unmute me, raise hand, or invite.
Okay, and I found it, and I have been looking everywhere on this page for it all evening. So thank you for telling me.
I know.
I also,
we're all.
I also sent messages to Trish saying, you know, I'd like to make a comment, and that's been sitting there for a long time. So thanks very much, and I'm glad to know how this works better now.
Dave,
It's a learning curve.
yeah, Dave, I just have to say that there's a lot of distractions with this whole setup, and texting is one of like the last things, of the chat is one of the last things we focus on with everything that's going on. So I apologize for you not being able to express yourself.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
Now can we get
so-
on with our vote?
Yeah, so we had a motion and a second,
I looked for it.
and all in favor of adopting these new revisions to the bylaws?
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
What?
One opposition?
No.
No oppositions? Okay.
No.
No, we
All
took
right.
a moment to unmute. We're just late with our eyes.
All right, sorry. Okay, so, all right, so that motion passes. So it looks like we can adjourn the meeting if there's no other comments.
I move
Yeah.
we adjourn.
This is
All right.
Jan, and I just want to thank Sandra. I mean, she really did a thorough job.
Absolutely.
Input a couple of times, and I really appreciate it. I mean, it's not dynamic reading, and I think it'll be more helpful as we go forward. The one thing, just for all of us on here now, is, you know, if you're ever on the election committee and do absentee ballots, really look at what the work on that is, because it is major.
And we did put a condition in there, Jan, that said absentee ballots only if like necessary, if like they're
Excellent.
physically unable to attend the meeting. And thank you for the thanks, but I also have to especially thank the committee and especially Sue, who.
Sue, especially Sue, yeah, to work, yes,
through,
yes,
like,
yeah,
We spent hours and hours, so.
Super. Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah.
Well, I just like to, well, thank you all, you guys, you were great too, and on the committee and everybody that added comments, but I want to say that we did this in the mindset of running better meetings and having them go more smoothly, and a lot of stuff that happened tonight hopefully won't happen again, just because we're all talking too much. We should not talk so much. We should listen to other people, let everyone speak their mind. And when Tim is ready, he'll call on us to speak. So we're organized. It's not a free for all. And I think that is our intent, to have things run smoother and to run more expediently and allow us to do our work in a more respectful way. So,
And in a way, when we're all gone, there's going to be a very clear process laid out that anybody can read and follow up on. So yeah, we really took into account process and future.
Thanks for all that work. I really appreciate that. Everybody appreciates that.
thank you.
All right, we adjourning?
All right, we're adjourning. Have a good night, everybody. And,
9:30, Tim.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Have a
Merry
happy New Year,
Christmas.
happy holidays.
Happy
Stay safe.
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
First night of
Hanukkah
Hanukkah.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.